The Mafia franchise has spent 20 years being almost great. From its humble beginnings in the early 2000s to the unfortunate disaster that was Mafia 3, this is a series that's always been on the cusp of greatness. But there's always something holding it back, and it's never the same thing. Sometimes it's a lack of a proper budget and outdated tech, sometimes it's publisher meddling, and sometimes it's a complete misunderstanding of what makes a game fun. The Mafia games have been through it all. With Mafia the Old Country releasing soon, there's no better time to look back at this franchise, its successes, its stumbles, and everything in between. So sit back, relax, and let me show you why the Mafia series is not the legend it should have been. Our story begins in 1997, where Petr Wojcicka and Jan Kudera founded Illusion Softworks, a small tech studio that was never really meant to cause waves in the gaming world. Their first few games would prove that. They wouldn't really gain any traction outside of Czechia, and when they did in the case of Hidden and Dangerous, they got a very lukewarm reception. But all the while they were working on these titles, they were also working on a massive project for a studio of their size and stature, Mafia. Mafia would begin development in 1998, and it would see the team size grow from 5 to 40 people when it finally launched. According to Roman Hladik, Mafia 1's character art designer and later art director of the other Mafia games, the game was originally meant to feature a policeman going up against the entire Mafia. That would all change, however, when Daniel Vavra became Mafia 1's sole writer. He made the protagonist a part of the Italian mob. It would be a story heavily inspired by movies like The Godfather and Goodfellas. And while everybody over at Illusion knew they were making something good, I don't know if anybody realized just how life-changing Mafia 1 would prove to be for the studio. So on August 29, 2002, 4 years after it first begun development, Mafia released, and it was an unprecedented success. It was critically acclaimed, loved by fans, and sold over 2 million copies by 2007. As is true for many games released during that era, there's two ways to look at Mafia 1. On the one hand, you have a game that was incredibly unique and novel in a time where only GTA had attempted a crime sandbox, and on the other hand, you have a janky mess by today's standards. Playing Mafia for the first time in 2025, it's incredibly easy to tell that this game was cobbled together with sticks, superglue, and prayers. Keep in mind, however, that I played the PS2 version, which is technically inferior to the PC version. This game has so many issues, but I can't really hold any of them against it. The people at Illusion made the game they wanted to make regardless of any of their limitations. And these limitations were a lot less noticeable when the game first launched. Mafia 1 follows the story of Tommy Angelo as he rises and falls through the ranks of the Italian mob in the 1930s. It's all framed through Tommy telling his story to a police officer when he asks to enter witness protection. Mafia 1's story hits all the beats of a good story for the genre, but nothing feels earned. When things inevitably go sideways and betrayals start happening, it's hard to care about the characters when they're voiced so poorly. There's no chemistry between them. Tommy, Polly, and Sam don't really feel like friends, even if the game insists that they are. A scene that stuck out to me was near the start of the game when you meet Sarah, Tommy's future wife. She mentions how funny Polly was, despite him barely talking up to that point and definitely not saying anything funny. And it's not the material's fault either. The writing's actually pretty good. Everybody's saying what their characters would say in their given situation, but it is delivered in such a way that doesn't make it believable. It's like if college students did their own rendition of Scarface. The game is definitely rough around the edges, and that translates to the gameplay as well. I applaud anybody who beat this game legitimately, because this was hard. You get one checkpoint every 5 minutes or so, and the only way to regen health is to find one of the few health packs lying around the map. So the only real way to make progress is by either proceeding with extreme caution or abusing save states like I did. This is definitely a game meant for mouse and keyboard, as it doesn't even have a lock-on system. It tells you it has something close to a lock-on system, and then that system proceeds to function once every 10 attempts. There's also the driving, which is completely fine. The game is set in an open world, but there's nothing to do in it other than driving back and forth between missions. I'm actually okay with this, it helps immerse you more into the world of the game. My only complaint is that I could have done without driving back to the base after each mission. It just seems like needless playtime padding. The game's open world is also where its staggering attention to detail comes into display, especially for its era. If you pass a red light, the police will start chasing you. The same applies to if they catch you speeding. I was also surprised to see them chase after me when they saw me holding a gun. This is stuff that people had never seen before in 2002. It is a bit gimmicky though. Even though the intentions behind these things were good, you can start seeing through these mechanics the more you play the game. For crimes like speeding or passing a red light, you can just stop and pay the fine. And since you don't have any money in this game, paying the fine is the most efficient way of getting the police away from you. And if the crime can't be resolved by paying up, then the police in this game is fairly incompetent and will hilariously crash at its earliest convenience. There's a brilliant game somewhere in there, but Mafia 1 hasn't really stood the test of time. I think Illusion did a brilliant job with the resources they had available to them, but it's so rough around the edges that I don't think it quite matches up to the greats of that era. If only someone could remake it with a bigger budget and today's technology, now that would be a good game. And I realize it's unfair to judge a game released 23 years ago by today's standards. People loved it when it released, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching this video still hold it in very high regard. And the numbers don't lie, the game was a massive success, and thus Illusion would start their journey to make Mafia 2. But things wouldn't go as planned. In a 2017 article for the PlayStation blog, Mafia 2's art director Roman Hladik wrote that when Illusion started working on Mafia 2, they thought that since they had already completed Mafia 1, making a sequel would be a cakewalk. Little did anybody know that Mafia 2 would take double the development time of the original. The creation of Mafia 2 was a complete mess. The game was originally slated to be a PS2 title, but since the new gen consoles were quickly approaching, Illusion decided to push it further back so Mafia 2 could release alongside the PS3 and the Xbox 360. That would not happen. It's unclear what exactly caused Mafia 2 to be delayed for so long, but in 2008, 5 years after development started, 2K Games bought out Illusion, renaming it to 2K Tech. That would only exacerbate problems as 2K wanted the game done and they wanted it done quickly. Vavra was not a fan of the way 2K worked, and after disagreements regarding Mafia 2's content and Mafia 3's script being outright rejected by 2K, he left the company in 2009 and would go on to direct Kingdom Come Deliverance 1 and 2. It's a small world. So after a tumultuous journey, multiple delays and 8 years of development, Mafia 2 finally launched on August 24th, 2010. And despite everything, it's a really good game. It follows the story of Vito Scaletta, who joins the Mafia in order to pay off his family's debts. As a general structure, the game is very similar to Mafia 1. Everything that we talked about regarding Mafia 1 also makes an appearance here, only 10 times better. This is a complete upgrade over the original. It's what a sequel should be. The acting is now excellent, the story is incredibly interesting, and the gameplay is good enough for what the game is trying to achieve. Unlike the original, Mafia 2 still holds up really well today, but it feels like it had a lot of untapped potential. While the open world is gorgeous and feels alive, there's still nothing to do in it. I can only imagine that there were plans for a more GTA-esque type world, but was scrapped due to a lack of time and money. According to Vavra himself, a lot of content was cut from Mafia 2, and there was even a theory that some cut content reappeared in some DLC missions I didn't play. Regardless, it still feels like there are remnants here of the game that Mafia 2 was meant to be. Empire City is filled with phone booths that you use precisely once in the main story. Each car has a fuel gauge that is never mentioned and only comes into play if you specifically go out of your way to make your car run out of gas. And the story's final act feels pretty rushed. Mafia 2 is a slow burn at first, meticulously depicting Victor's rise through the ranks of the Italian mob. In the final section of the game, he essentially kills everybody and that's the game. It's still good, but there was a lot of story crammed into very few missions. Mafia 2 is a game where critics and fans slightly disagreed on. Critics thought it was generally okay, while fans really enjoyed it. Mafia 2 sold around 3.5 million copies and was deemed successful enough for Mafia 3 to be greenlit. Oh, and one last thing, for some reason Mafia 2 contains a lot of casual racism. Characters will throw out slurs regularly, while supporting characters are presented in a stereotypical way in accordance with their ethnicity. If you're going to use slurs in the name of historical accuracy and then proceed to stereotype every single side character the player meets, it feels less like something done for historical purposes and more like a childish excuse to say naughty words. It didn't enhance my immersion, nor do I think The Godfather would have been better off including slurs every 20 minutes. Still, the game isn't about race, so I guess I can let it slide. Anyways, Mafia 3 is about race. Just like Mafia 2, Mafia 3 had a rough development cycle. Despite starting development somewhere in 2011, 2K Tech was restructured in 2014, with its Prague studio being shut down. In its place, a new studio was formed and subsequently took over Mafia 3's development, called Hangar 13. Hangar 13 wanted Mafia 3 to finally fulfill the franchise's potential. A fully open world game, one where you're free to go wherever you want and do whatever you please. Hangar 13 also made a bold choice with the game's story. Mafia 3 would be set in a fictional version of New Orleans in the late 60s. You would play as Lincoln Clay, a black Vietnam vet living in a hostile world. Mafia 3 would examine racial issues in the US in the 60s in something that was a bold move. This is a time period that hasn't really been explored by video games, so for them to at least try is something admirable. But when the game launched on October 7th, 2016, it was a mess. It was very glitchy, and even besides the bugs, its structure as a game was way off. Let's start with the most interesting part of Mafia 3, which is the story. Before you even start the game, you get a message from the developer saying that a lot of insensitive things will be said in the game in order to show the plight of black people in the 60s, and not seeing those things would be even more of a disservice to the struggle of millions of people. In the game, pretty much every antagonist, and there's a lot of them, is cartoonishly racist. They will say some abhorrent things about or towards the main protagonist. It's like they're contractually obligated to say some variation of the N-word whenever they appear on screen. My favorite one is the guy that is brought in specifically to kill Clay, has one line mentioning he enjoys killing black people but in a less tactful manner, and then you kill him right in the next mission. Initially, I thought Hangar 13 went a bit overboard with the racism depicted. But after a bit of research, turns out a lot of people were overtly racist in the southern parts of the US during that era. And the game does have some interesting ways of depicting racism. Characters will be shocked at the idea you are even invited to a white-only country club. Certain store owners will call the police on you if you linger for too long in their stores. The police itself will take longer to respond in predominantly black areas compared to white areas. It's solid stuff, but I do have one problem with this. The three people helping you are three characters based on prejudiced stereotypes of their ethnicity. You get help from a drunken Irishman, a Haitian woman that has a voodoo shop, and Vito Scalera, who has had so much of his personality cut off that he's completely interchangeable with any other Italian mobster. When you're making a game about race and go above and beyond to hammer your point in, only to turn around and employ three ethnic stereotypes, I don't know, it comes off as a bit hypocritical, doesn't it? Also, Hangar 13 doesn't really have anything to say about racism other than the obvious racism is bad. Mafia 3 is great at putting you in Clay's shoes, but shies away from exploring the topic deeper. The plot opts to become a generic revenge story rather than have a meaningful discussion. The story as a whole isn't a lot better either. It has an excellent first 3 hours where it's easy to get fooled into thinking that you're playing through a great story. The characters are compelling, the performances are great, and the betrayal at the end of the prologue was an unexpected and brilliantly executed twist. But right after that, the real game sets in, and not only do we lose two great supporting characters in Sammy and Ellis, but the story in general gets dropped in its entirety. It's like playing Assassin's Creed Shadows all over again, and I'm not sure if that's a bigger indictment on Mafia 3, or the game released 9 years after it. The story gets replaced by Clay wanting to take down each and every territory that belongs to the guy that betrayed him, Sal Marcano. The game does a lot of mental gymnastics to explain why you can't immediately chase after Marcano, despite Mafia 1 and 2 showing that the most effective way to gain control of a territory is to immediately go to the highest ranking member of the opposing family you can find and make sure his free trial of breathing expires. But anyways, the game needed a contrived reason for you to take over 9 territories. And here's another problem, you supposedly have the freedom to tackle each territory whenever you want. That's not freedom though, that's just choosing in what order to go through a checklist. And since Hangar 13 graced us with this freedom, that means that the story can't move forward in any meaningful way for the next 15 hours. The status quo always has to remain the same, and thus no progress can be made other than Clay crossing off another target off his list. This is so repetitive. Go to a new territory, do a bunch of busy work, kill the 2 racket leaders, kill the territory leader, watch a cutscene, rinse and repeat 9 times. You don't need me to tell you that this is boring and it dilutes what could have been a great story. I found the ending to be especially bad. Skip to this timestamp if you want to play this mess. Where Lincoln, despite murdering each and every person that even looked at Marcano, had an entire post-game interview with the man himself. Yeah man, you may have killed my family, but GG's. Funnily enough, this is the second game to do that after Assassin's Creed 3. Otherwise, it's a competently made game. Driving and shooting is decent enough, but Mafia has always been about the balance. You get a little bit of driving, a little bit of shooting, and a little bit of story. Everything just enough so not to get stale. But when you remove story from the mix, your chances of having fun drastically go down. Despite everything however, the glitches and the poor reception across the table, Mafia 3 sold exceptionally well, over 7.5 million copies to be precise. The road to get there was not easy for Hangar 13. A Kotaku feature published 2 years after Mafia 3 launched highlighted just how difficult the game's development was and how the team struggled to finalize the game's structure in a timely fashion. But the most important thing to come out of that article was that Hangar 13's head, Hayden Blackman, was presented a choice by 2K. Either make Mafia 4 set in 1970s Las Vegas, or make an entirely new intellectual property. Blackman chose the latter option. Before we move on with Hangar 13's next steps, I'd just like to take the time to ask you to subscribe if you're enjoying the video. These videos take time to make, and one sub can mean a lot to the channel. Back to the video. In the years following Mafia 3's release, Hangar 13 would see major layoffs despite the game being one of the quickest selling in 2K's history. The studio began development on a brand new IP called Voltron, a 3-person co-op arcade shooter with a $50 million budget. This game would be cancelled in 2021, but not before presumably somewhere over at either 2K or Hangar 13 realized that they needed a cash injection. And what better way to get that than to re-release the Mafia trilogy with a fresh coat of paint. The definitive editions of Mafia 2 and 3 are nothing to really write home about. It's the games with slightly spruced up graphics. The definitive edition of Mafia 1, however, is a whole other story. Instead of a simple remaster, this was a remake of the 2002 title. Hangar 13 did a fantastic job here. Essentially everything was reworked here. We got Mafia 1 with new graphics, Mafia 3's gameplay, and most importantly brand new voice actors. The gameplay is good enough, but it's the story that's the main selling point. Remember how I said that the original Mafia had all the correct story beats without the relationships to back them up? Well, that issue is completely gone here. Every character gets to shine here, and thus a lot more emotional weight is given when something bad happens to them. And while the story isn't reinventing the wheel or anything, it's the fact that you're able to play through a Mafia story that makes it so novel even in today's gaming landscape. It's also a great game to recommend to people that don't play a lot of games. Just a compelling story paired alongside adequate gameplay. This is the type of game that needs to get remade. A diamond in the rough that needed proper polishing. At its core though, this is still the 2002 game, and after playing through all the games, I still don't think the franchise has peaked. There's so much potential here that for a long list of reasons has never quite been tapped into. In my opinion, the Mafia games should follow into GTA's footsteps. You should be able to run your own business. You should be able to properly explore the place that you're in. And I don't think the old country will be that either. By all accounts, this seems like a side game. It'll probably be good, but if 2K is charging less than full price for a game, I'm sorry to say this, but there must be something seriously wrong with it. And $20 below the current standard AAA game price? This game might be glitchier than Big Rigs. I really hope I'm wrong. The Mafia franchise has been through a lot. It has encountered pretty much every problem possible throughout its near 25-year lifespan. The old country will probably be a decider for a lot of things going forward for the series, and these things can range from full cancellation to a full-blown Mafia 4. Hopefully one day the franchise can reach the peak it deserves. I just hope it won't be sleeping with the fishes before it gets there. Thank you for watching the video. Going through the Mafia games was definitely an experience, one that I probably won't repeat again. The next video will probably be on Concord, so stay tuned for that. Until then, you can watch my retrospective on the Doom games, including John Carmack comparing video game stories to stories of rated R content, Steve Jobs presenting Doom 3's engine, Doom 2016 almost being a Call of Duty ripoff, and more. You can click here to watch it, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.